Hey folks, welcome back. I'm FalconePunch 55 and today we are going to be talking about the tournament meta post one night at Karazhan. Now if you're like me, you've been playing Hearthstone for a very long time, and in that time the meta has fluctuated pretty dramatically. But for the longest time now, things haven't really changed. Warriors have been dominant ever since Grim Patron. Druid have proven they don't need Force of Nature, Savage Roar to win games. And Zoo? I don't think I need to tell you that that deck has proven that it can last over time. It's been a huge month for Hearthstone tournaments recently. I've personally casted for a little bit of Starladder, Deck Gauntlet, ESL and a few other things over the last couple of weeks. And of course, been watching HCT, and I have to say, there is a very prominent tournament meta right now. Looking at a typical best out of 5 game of any format with one ban, I would expect to see Warrior, Shaman and Druid picked almost every time, by every player. The versatility of the Warrior, the brutality of the Shaman and, well, the Yogg of the Druid puts these 3 decks firmly at the top when it comes to Hearthstone tournaments. In fact, Shaman is so solidly ahead right now, even in front of the other 2 king decks, that players have almost been banning it exclusively in everything I've been casting. Now there are a few reasons to Shaman's rise in popularity. With Karazhan, what Blizzard essentially did is take Shaman, already one of the strongest classes in the game, give them 2 cards that can be used in almost any type of Shaman deck, and then a 3rd card that single-handedly created a new archetype. The versatility of Shaman, matched with the brutal strength of the class, makes it really hard to plan around in tournament. It's very hard to counter, and as a result is currently very frequently banned. While Dragon Warrior doesn't seem to be quite oppressive as it was a little while back, I've actually found that there are almost as many Control Warriors being played right now in tournaments as there are Dragon Warriors. Due to the viability of Pirate, OTK, Patron, Cthulhu, and other types of warriors that have been popping up recently, Warrior is another class that's actually just really hard to play around. And this is the real stickler. It's the reason that tournament play is so different to Constructed. In Constructed, you just need to win a lot of games and fast. It doesn't matter how many you win and how many you lose, as long as you have a positive win rate. The faster you're playing games, the faster you'll hit Legend. But in tournament play, you bring a set of classes, you're told which classes your opponent brings, and you have to begin scheming immediately. A skilled tournament player knows the strengths and weaknesses of every one of his decks. He knows exactly what classes he wants to ban, regardless of what his opponent is actually playing, and knows which classes he wants to queue his decks into. Finally, Druid sees a lot of play because it runs Yoggs as well, because it's a really strong, skilled class. Seriously though, we have reached the point where you see Druid, you assume it starts with a ton of ramp, plays some Arcane Giants, Malygos and Yogg-Saron. This is just universally considered the strongest Druid deck at the moment. Meaning that it is slightly easier to plan around than the Shaman and Warrior counterparts, which is why Druid gets banned a little bit less than the other 2 classes. But the deck is really strong. It does the rampy things, it has the threats, and it performed particularly well in the America's Championship very recently. So what about the other decks? Well, let's start with Priest. Priest sucks. Sorry. If it's any consolation, I actually want Priest to be good. But I've seen one player play Priest in the last 40 or so series I've casted. Hunter, Mage and Warlock all make the cut at being playable in tournaments. In fact, if players have to choose 4 decks, you generally expect one of these classes to make the cut as number 4. That's Discard Lock, Tempo Mage and Midrange Hunter usually. And the fact that I've been able to so confidently point out which archetypes these will be kinda show why these decks aren't the top of the tournament format. See, it's very easy to predict which type of deck your opponent is playing when you see them in a lineup, and therefore it's easy to play around, makes the banning strategy a little easier, etc, etc. It kind of even helps you see what your opponent's game plan is when you see which of these decks they're playing. You assess the strengths and weaknesses of the individual decks and decks as a whole and come up with a plan. And what's really funny is, of course, Tempo Mage and Hunter are arguably the strongest decks on the ladder right now, so I just find it interesting that they're not two of the top tournament decks. And yeah, okay, Freeze Mage, Reno Lock, and Secret Hunter do sometimes see some play in tournaments, but not often, not by a long shot. Finally, the two classes that I think are in the most interesting position, we have Paladin and Rogue. Paladin does seem to be on the rise in tournaments. We've gone from not seeing many at all to bit by bit seeing a few of them sneak into lineups. Pro players have been trying really hard to master Murloc Paladin, a deck that actually is still really strong, especially with the addition of Barnes and Ivory Knight. I will say Murloc Paladin mirror match is probably the most interesting game you could ever watch in Hearthstone. Could easily do a whole video on that topic. I'll come back to that in the future. Questing Adventurer Rogue. Another deck that is actually on the rise at the moment, takes a lot of skill to use, but when it does get played, I've actually seen it completely sweep. So really strong in the right hands. I believe that it's going to get more popular over time. In fact, I believe that about both of these classes. They tend to have really good win rates when they are played because only players that know how to use them actually play them. So watch out for these, and maybe learn how to play them if you want to stay ahead of the game. And that about wraps up my video on the tournament meta. If you liked the video, don't forget to press that like button and drop me a comment if you've got any ideas about what I should talk about next week. Also, go ahead and check out Hearthhead's website and drop them a follow on Facebook and Twitter. You can also follow me at FalconePunch 55. I'll see you next week.